The rain drummed softly against the glass windows of the Tempest Division headquarters as Elias Voss studied the classified file in front of him. The words "temporal anomalies," the shadow, were stamped in bold red letters across the top, and beneath them, a series of grainy photographs showed a cloaked figure appearing at different points in history, always moments before a key historical event was altered or erased. The most recent anomaly was the most alarming. In 72 hours, an event would take place that would trigger a global collapse of the timeline. "This is our last chance to stop him," said Director Jonas Mercer, sliding a sleek silver device across the table. It was the Chrono Shifter, a piece of technology that allowed for precise jumps through time. "Your mission is to track the shadow to London, 1892. A scientist, Dr. Alistair Grayson, was murdered before he could patent a revolutionary energy source. We believe the shadow is behind it. Stop the assassination. Prevent the anomaly." Elias nodded, strapping the Chrono Shifter to his wrist. He had done this 100 times before, jumping through time, fixing anomalies, ensuring history remained intact. But as the device activated and the world around him blurred into a cascade of shifting colors, he had no idea that this mission would change everything. The thick fog of Victorian London clung to the streets like a living thing, curling around gaslit lamps and horse-drawn carriages. Elias adjusted his coat, blending into the crowd as he approached Dr. Grayson's laboratory. The target was inside, working late into the night. Elias positioned himself in the shadows, waiting for any sign of the shadow. Then, the door creaked open. A hooded figure slipped inside. Elias moved swiftly, drawing his weapon as he entered the lab. The scientist looked up in alarm, but Elias ignored him, focusing on the assassin. In a flash, the figure lunged, and the two clashed in a brutal fight. Blades flashed, fists struck, and bookshelves toppled. Elias managed to grab the assassin's hood and ripped it away. He froze. The face staring back at him was his own. For a moment, time itself seemed to stutter. His future self, the shadow, smiled grimly. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out," he murmured, then activated a small device. A pulse of energy exploded outward, and the entire room shattered like glass. Elias was pulled into a vortex of light and shadow, spiraling through the fractures of time. He awoke in a ruined city. The air was thick with smoke, and twisted metal structures jutted out of the ground like broken bones. New York, 2047, but not the New York he knew. This was a future destroyed by time itself. Staggering forward, Elias found a bunker hidden beneath the rubble. Inside, the walls were lined with records detailing temporal collapses. Then he saw it, his own file. Elias Voss, the catalyst. The reports explained everything. At some point in his future, he had discovered a horrifying truth. Time travel was never meant to exist. Every use of it fractured reality, creating paradoxes and distortions that would eventually tear the universe apart. To prevent this fate, his future self had made a drastic decision to erase the key historical moments that led to the creation of time travel. He had become the very threat he had sworn to stop. But there was still one final event left to erase. The last anomaly on the list was his own past self. Elias realized the truth too late. A portal opened behind him, and the shadow, his future self, stepped through, weapon in hand. "You weren't supposed to find this place," future Elias said. Elias raised his gun. "And you weren't supposed to destroy history." They moved at the same time. Shots fired, energy crackled, and the bunker collapsed into light. Elias found himself in Paris, 2120, standing at the top of the Eiffel Tower. Below, the lights of the city shimmered like stars. He knew why he was here. This was the moment when Dr. Helena Marceau would unveil the first successful Chrono Shifter prototype, the birth of time travel, and his future self was already waiting for her. Elias raced forward just as future Elias raised his weapon toward the scientist. "Stop!" he shouted. Future Elias turned, his expression weary. "You don't understand," he said. "I've seen the end. Time travel is a disease. It destroys everything. If we let this moment happen, history will collapse." "But you became the destruction," Elias argued, stepping closer. "Killing these people won't fix time. It will only break it further." For the first time, doubt flickered in future Elias's eyes. He hesitated. That was all Elias needed. He fired his chrono stabilizer, hitting his future self with a pulse of energy. Future Elias gasped as his body froze in time, locked in a stasis field. The crisis was over, but the real decision still remained. Elias stood before the Chrono Shifter's final command panel. He had two options: erase time travel from existence, ensuring none of this would ever happen, but also erasing his own existence. Let history continue, knowing that time travel would always be a danger. He took a deep breath, then made his choice. A final pulse of energy surged through time, rewriting history itself. Elias woke up in a world where time travel had never been invented. His memories began to fade, replaced by a new life, one where he was an ordinary man, free from the burden of time manipulation. As he walked through the streets of modern-day London, he saw a woman pass by, Dr. Helena Marceau, alive and well, completely unaware of the destiny she once had. She smiled at him. Elias smiled back, knowing he had saved history, even if no one would ever remember the end.